Hello, everybody, and welcome to our panel discussion on the 2026 Playbook for Microsoft Solutions. My name is Tom Lilly. I sit here in our Office of the CTO here at Netrix, and I'm joined by four of my colleagues also in our Office of the CTO. We have Mr. Chris Clark, who is our Field CTO for cybersecurity. We have Mr. Sam Sharma, who is our Field CTO for digital workplace. Myself, I'm our Field CTO for cloud solutions. Mike Lutenberger, who is our Field CTO for generative AI, and Sean McManus, who covers data and app modernization for the field or for the Office of the CTO. For today, what we want to do is really talk through what 2026 looks like from a Microsoft Playbook perspective. There are a lot of changes. There are a lot of new things that are announced at Ignite and since Ignite. And then obviously, as we get into 2026, there are also other things that Microsoft has changed or they have announced. So we definitely want to have a discussion about what some of those things are and give you all a perspective on where you should be going to in 2026 with your Microsoft architecture, infrastructure, and your licensing. So we're going to cover off on a lot of different topics, really covering on all of our areas of expertise. But really where we want to start today is just a high level overview of our different areas and where we think that everybody should be going and some of the high level trends. So with that, I'm going to start with our first question. So as Microsoft's portfolio expands in 2026, what should leaders be thinking about differently when it comes to investing in their IT budget and implementing IT solutions? So Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you to start to talk a little bit about security.
Sure, thanks, Tom. So yeah, main topics I'd say I'm having conversations on a daily basis about are, of course, AI. It's going to be probably throughout our conversations here, but
I say that those two letters a lot today.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, number one. But Gen AI security overall, which kind of relates to also like data readiness around Gen AI, including Copilot. So those are really two of the main top areas, right? Understanding, how to control AI usage within your environment, what your policies are, what tools you have to be able to actually enforce those policies. And then specifically with like Copilot readiness is, do you have exposed sensitive data that you're preparing for to make sure that you're, ready for Copilot? So I'd say those are really the top two there, but also Security Copilot being part of E5 is huge. And then just agentic AI overall and understanding how to discover agents and control them in your environment. So besides that, zero trust is always top of mind for everyone, as everyone's favorite keyword, but goes across a lot of things. And then from kind of a strategic level, we're having a lot of M&A type of conversations, right?
Yeah.
And all the technology that goes into doing those types of engagements. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing the exact same thing. And, Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you as our resident AI expert, because I'm sure you're seeing a lot of the same things.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of to piggyback right off of what Chris was saying is definitely some of the data readiness and security components, right? We kind of have like a three-pronged approach to this, that this is where we believe you should start. And I say that because we have lots of customers that will come here that haven't done these things yet, and they're like looking to like just right off the rip do an agent or something. And we don't believe that's the best kind of approach to take, because if these foundational things aren't there, that's not going to be what you want it to be, right? So what we like to look at is, again, gathering some use cases and ROI of that. And basically what I like to say is get a company AI literate before you go down this path of developing an agent, right? Because, and the reason I say that is because whatever you think you're going to do today with an agent without really knowing a lot about AI, you will absolutely change your approach to that agent later once you do understand it, and even most of your processes that you do today. So it would almost be like, I don't want to say wasting money, but you're wasting time on that when you will come at it from a different perspective. And again, this is just with working with customers where like, I thought we would do it this way. After learning about AI, I would never do it that way, that type of thing. And then of course your data, making sure it can access the data is structured right, all that fun stuff. And then obviously kind of the security and governance component of that, making sure the right data is there, the right people have access to that data, because you don't want it to, pull up salaries or things that it should not, just because there was loose governance. So those to me are the kind of the three pillars you start with. And if those are all great, then you can go on to agents, more training, all that type of stuff.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think that the data foundation is definitely an important piece. And Sean, I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of chat about that, since I know that's sort of your area of expertise.
Yeah, I mean, we see that all the time when we're talking about fabric projects and data readiness. A lot of companies have that interest in being able to eventually roll out Copilot or other agentic AI against their data. But the reality is you have to get that data in order first. And so we're seeing a lot of success with our customers that are using Fabric to be able to do that. And one of the cool things that that was just announced recently at Ignite last year was Fabric IQ, and so that's really this effort to put a broader semantic intelligence layer on across your data. And so, in the past, you've been able to set up semantic models that allow you to name things properly that, in a way that your report generators are going to understand. But this Fabric IQ is essentially like semantic models on steroids. It works over the entire Fabric environment and not just specific to a single semantic model. So what you're seeing there is the ability to really trust the results that you're getting when you're eventually turning over your modeling to natural language queries, and you're going to be more happy with the results that you're going to get. It's going to be more consistent. Um, and then it also opens you up for further agentic work against that data as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I think where we all sort of see this coming together is the user experience, right? Is how users interact with these bots and other AI components, and how they become fluent and really how they integrate those into their daily lives. And Sat, I want to get your perspective on that from a digital workplace, because I know from a team's perspective, and even doing voice versus text and things like that are things that you've seen.
Yeah, for sure. So from a 2026 strategy perspective, right, we are having a ton of consulting strategic type discussions with the client. One of the things that comes up quite a bit, and I think companies are starting to realize, is to take that step back and do some internal assessment of the current environment. I'm sure we all have run into situations where we get into conversations. There are redundant tool overspending on similar product, right? So other than like getting ready for the AI and adapting it properly, what I'm seeing companies do, and I think this should be on everybody's forefront, is take a step back, see what we have, do some assessment. I mean, we have some programs on doing health check assessments for clients, look at the technology, look at the licensing. I think this is like one of the byproduct of pandemic, where a lot of things got pushed out prematurely, right? And now, as we all know from the Ignite, Microsoft is obviously doubling down on AI. Agentic era is what I'm hearing the term these days across all the productivity. So it's there already for most people. They just don't realize it, right? And I think the other thing that's happening is what I'm gonna call it is a workplace intelligence. So now with Microsoft Copilot, we have Microsoft Places that I'll talk a little bit more about later in this discussion today. But the thing is, there is projections that there is going to be 90% or more hybrid style meetings in 2026. So there's going to be one or more people who will be working remotely in these meetings, and people want to feel included, right? They want to be heard, they want to be listened to, they want to be part of the discussions. We have global teams working from different time zone, different geography. So hybrid workplace is going to be a big thing, in addition to kind of identifying the redundant spending as well.
Yeah, there's nothing more frustrating than being a remote participant to a meeting that is largely held on site, and you can't understand what they're saying. The audio is bad, the video is bad, you can't see the whiteboard. It's really hard to be able to engage properly there. So I think you're right, Sat, about that. If there are going to be hybrid meetings, that has to be solved for.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't think they're going to go anywhere. I know a lot of organizations are implementing a return to office policy, and we've seen a lot of that from our customers, but there's still only hybrid work. It's still, hey, we're 3 days in, 2 days out, or 4 days in and 1 day out. So you're always going to have those people, and I think that's where that user experience really it becomes very important. So I agree. So I mean, overall, I think the major theme that we're seeing here, or themes that I think I've heard from you all, is number one, AI, and that's once again probably going to be the preponderance of this discussion here today. But we don't just want to focus on that because there's, I think we have an understanding that IT is more than just AI, for as much as everybody likes to talk about that and use their two favorite letters. The other piece I really think is going to be that user experience is going to be hybrid work. It's going to be, how do we make sure that we're getting the most out of our workforce, no matter where they end up being. And there's a lot of components to that. There's the, user interaction, there's security, there's tooling presentation, things like that, that I think all play into that, remote user experience. And then I think the final one, that I've heard from a couple people here is essentially licensing rationalization. Is, are we paying for what we should be? Are we using what we're paying for? Are we, double paying for two solutions that do the exact same thing? And I know that we've seen a lot of that, whether it's, precipitated by a merger acquisition, whether it's just a cost cutting measure because budget season is upon us, or, whatever the reason is. I know we're seeing a lot of those. But let's get into some deeper topics, because I think there's a lot of meat that we can sort of get into on some of these things. And I really do want to start with AI because I think it is a really big topic and where we want to focus. And, we've talked a little bit about foundational AI, how, things we should do before you get into your AI journey, some of the, tools and some of the capabilities. And I really think that as we get into it, data storage, and especially on Azure and in Fabric, are two major areas. So I know from mine, Microsoft announced Horizon DB. It's currently in preview for Azure, as a managed database that is meant to underpin AI, pretty easily. It's meant to be very quick to stand up. It's meant to be very quick and easy to integrate with. And then, obviously get your data, vector stores, et cetera, and start to build and train and do inference on top of it. So that I think is really big. But where I think most of our customers are going to go, and where I think we've seen most of our customers go, is going to be Fabric. So Sean, I know you want to talk a little bit about Fabric IQ and some of the new announcements there. So why don't you take away, give us a little bit of a breakdown on some of the cool Fabric stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I hit on Fabric IQ earlier in the first question. I think the other area where I really see, and this is from the very beginning, I've seen benefits for Fabric, is its ability to aggregate data sources from all over the map. So cloud, on-prem, SQL Server databases, all kinds of relational databases, non-relational databases, structured, unstructured data. It's really good at having all of those connectors out in the world to be able to integrate and pull in data. But what I've been seeing in the last year, or last half year, and it's going to be continuing into 2026, is various techniques that are allowing that data ingestion piece to be essentially streamlined. So if you look at things like SQL mirroring, that is now available within a myriad of the Azure products, that allows those instantaneous data movement from SQL Server, Cosmos DB, PostgreSQL, and others right directly into the Fabric environment. So you can remove that need to even have to write ETL or the ingestion jobs. You're still going to maybe need to do some transformation, but that's a huge time saving on your Fabric development if you're not having to rewrite all of those ingestion jobs. So that's another piece. There's also been some new announcements around what they call zero copy interoperability. And so it's kind of related to mirroring, but it's essentially the ability to, in your Power BI, in Fabric reports, go out directly and query SAP, query Salesforce, query Databricks, Snowflake, all those kinds of databases that aren't actually in your environment. They're not even necessarily in Azure. But with using the open source table formats, they're able to make those connections into that Fabric environment. So you don't actually need to write those ingestion jobs for that data either. And so that serves a use case where you don't necessarily need to do data transformation, but you just want to have some access and visibility to reporting. So those are the two main areas where I see growth in 2026. Obviously, the AI piece, represented by Fabric IQ, but also that ease of connecting and accessing data from other data sources. Huge benefits to be seen going forward for that.
Yes, I mean, zero copy interoperability sounds really interesting to me because, a lot of our customers, if you want to get that data into your data lake or whatever, it used to be you had to write that ETL job and, hey, we've got to do all these things to, essentially make this work. And that was the only way to get that data. That could be, you mentioned like Salesforce, like that's a central part of any, financial organization or sales organization, or I mean, CRM in general, right? So to have that be a first party sort of data source, you had to go through all that rigmarole of setting up those jobs to ingest the data. So it's kind of interesting having that as a first party, available as a first party data source.
For sure. And I actually think this is one of the things Microsoft was really smart about when they started putting together Fabric is they didn't try to close off any doors, to non-Microsoft systems. They really tried to make it as open as possible. You are going back from the very beginning where you could have a connection to AWS S3 buckets in your data lake. I mean, so that they're really trying to go out of their way to use all of these open source formats and be able to make Fabric that platform that you can get your data from anywhere. So I see that as being a huge benefit and time savings for our customers.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the reasons we're seeing Power BI be a leader in, Gartner and Forrester and all of those assessments, right? And it's because of the interoperability and I think the ease of use,
Sure.
at least from what I've seen from my side. So Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you because obviously as we get into Fabric and, building the data estate and building the data platform, people want to do something with it, and that's something, it tends to be AI, whether it's Copilot or whether it's some of the other tools that we're seeing. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about the Gen AI side and what you're seeing from there?
Sure. Yeah. To kind of channel my inner Steve Ballmer, agents is going to be this year, right?
There you go. Are you going to get up on stage and dance now, or?
Yeah, I actually did right before this, so
perfect.
We'll have to record that and get that in here. Yeah, so I think this will definitely be, kind of the year of the agents, and the reason I say that is, again, everybody's kind of pushing agents, but where, again, Microsoft is doing great is with what's called Agent 365, and what is that, right? So the problem with agents before this was there was really no visibility into who, what, how these were created. They were out there. You didn't know what kind they were, who was doing it. There was like a lot of different ways to see it. You'd see some stuff in the tenant, you would see some stuff in the Power Platform, some stuff with security. So it was all over the place. This is kind of your centralized location of that. And obviously the idea behind this is that we have our citizen developer or citizen agent builder, what do you want to look at that? And that has always been a hard nut to crack because there was no visibility into these things, right? Now I think it kind of allows that to happen because now you kind of have someone in finance or HR go and create an agent that does X, Y, and Z. You'll know what it touches. You can put rules in place of things they can and cannot touch, right, with connections and whatnot. But you have the overall visibility. And one of the reports that's kind of like the out the gate one, which again I'm sure was based off feedback of previous things, is orphan report, right? Because that was always the Power Platform thing, right? Like a workflow. If it was someone left the company or whatever, and this was critical, and then all of a sudden this thing stopped working. That's one of the native reports out of there is basically orphaned agent, right? So that you see if this person has left or whatnot, that you can kind of resume control over that and let it keep going. If it was business critical and those types of things. So that to me is kind of the next piece of this. And what kind of expands that even more is bringing in Anthropic with OpenAI basically within here, because now if I'm creating Copilot Studio agents, I now have an option, right? Before it was just kind of you create an agent and it was what it was. Then further down the line, they added some of the different OpenAI models, cool. But now you have, Anthropic as an option when you're building Copilot Studio or whatnot. And that to me is great because now you're getting options, but also every LLM is different and they have their pros and their cons, right? So maybe everything just didn't fit in that OpenAI bucket that you were trying to do with that. And that's actually one of the first things I tell folks when they say, this agent that I wrote just isn't quite doing what I want. And I say, did you change the model? Because you could have one written a certain way and just flipping the model will have drastic changes on how that agent performs, acts, all that fun stuff. So I think that's going to be a big thing. I think, again, a lot of companies they loved the idea of agents, but didn't like the lack of visibility into it. Agent 365 kind of fixes that for them. So I think you're going to see a lot of that kind of build it, right? and that will kind of go into play with something called App Builder. We'll talk about that later, but.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you bring up Anthropic, which I mean, that was I was at Ignite, and when that was announced, the place just erupted. You know, they were the sort of the last big player that didn't have a major presence, and to have that announcement and have that LM available was insane. But the other thing that I'm seeing from a Foundry perspective is also now we've got, you know, model routing. So now you can actually have bots that can take advantage of multiple different models depending on their strengths and weaknesses. And Microsoft will actually make recommendations on changing the model based on, you know, cost per token and things like that. So I think that's going to make this, you know, make bots and make people's AI journeys even better, just because now we have some of those insights, we can get some of those recommendations. But, you know, even if you're not building your own, obviously Microsoft has Copilot and Copilot for everything. I think we've all seen the branding. It's almost like the new Defender. If for those of you that went through the Defender side of things, I'm looking at you, Chris. But Mike, why don't you go through some of the Copilot stuff and some of the new things that are going to be or have been announced for Copilot?
Yeah, so obviously I talked about Anthropic, but with that Anthropic comes in a couple different things. We have, obviously it's going to be in your Copilot Studio, and that's something you should see today, but also in what's called Researcher. And again, this was a Microsoft agent that's available for anybody to use. That's been around for 6+ months, but now you have the option in Researcher to flip it to Anthropic, right? So that's something that's great. And then that's going to be trickling into some of the other Office pieces, right, to where you're gonna be able to do those things and make them a little bit better, or try something different, right? Because that's one of the things I heard a lot with was, you know, maybe Excel isn't doing the things I wanted it to do because just that particular OpenAI model wasn't handling those things as well as people thought it should. Now with, again, Office agents and all that fun stuff, they're going to have that ability, right, to be able to do that and have that. And again, we've already seen the benchmarks. I've used it. It's night and day difference of what you get from, again, just a single out Excel in that, of what you get with that. Kind of the output. It's almost like it's not even the same thing. So that's huge. Another thing is almost from like I don't know, cost savings, however you want to look at that, is previously before Ignite, there were 3 other, and it could get very confusing with the naming. There were 3 other kind of Copilot SKUs, if you will. There was Copilot for sales, Copilot for finance, and Copilot for service. So those were $20 more. So those were $50 a piece. You still got the native Copilot for M365, but you had this kind of plus on it, right? And with the sales one, like it tapped into Salesforce and Dynamics, and service was Zendesk and ServiceNow and finance, right? So they kind of hooked into those automatically. Those are now part of it, right? So those are part of your $30 subscription. So nice. One thing I noticed is Microsoft is putting more and more into that Copilot SKU that users get access to right now. So again, those were $50 a piece before. Now that they're just part of your SKU, and everybody will have access to those things. Also, from kind of a price perspective, is they've lowered the price for basically business plans, right? Because they were also $30 a piece, but now they are $21 for those. So those are, what is it? I think it's under 300. If qualifies for small business, so that's $21. And I think right now, as we're speaking, there's actually a Microsoft's running a deal where it's like $17. So I mean, it is very hard to argue or even go against $17 with all the things I just said, right? You're still going to get OpenAI stuff. You're still going to get Anthropic. You're still going to get these other Copilot for sales and whatnot. All that stuff is in there now. So it's really compelling at that price point to not jump on board with that for all the things that you're going to get. Plus, it's going to be secure within your own M365 environment, which is priceless in my opinion, right? On that, you can't really put a price tag on that.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly agree, and I think security for AI is a huge topic. I know, Chris, and I'm going to turn it over to you here in a minute. That, you know, we are having a lot of security discussions about whether it's securing your data, whether it's securing people from putting sensitive information into public LLMs that may train off of it, you know, whether it's, you know, making sure that people know where things should live. And I know that Microsoft has really had a big push toward securing AI agents, endpoints for, for these sort of matters. So Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you. Just talk a little bit about the security stuff. And not just AI, by the way. If there's other stuff you want to talk about, we can certainly do that too. I don't want this to be a full AI conversation, but I think we all know where it's going.
Just because we just talked about it, kind of piggyback off the Agent 365 aspect, right? So I think that's a key area, when we start to see kind of the agent sprawl, right? That could be in any environment that we're looking at. The reality is that your users are probably using these features already, right? And developing agents and vibe coding and who knows what, right? So that's what we're faced with essentially. So there used to be, aspects of agents and Purview and Defender for Cloud Apps and Entra ID. So the whole thing with Agent 365 is to bring that into like a central control plane. But I have a lot of background in like Entra ID overall and conditional access, and these agents themselves have like there's a registry essentially, and they have IDs now, right? They're almost like humans, if you will, and how you want to think about security controls around them. So that's a great aspect that was missing, I'd say initially, but things are bringing together in that whole control plane.
So in addition to that, Agent 365 also gives you visibility into the permissions they have over the environment, right? I believe that's one of the features and functions.
Yeah. So there's, the overall aspect of discovery, knowing what's out there, right? Not only just the Microsoft agents, right? So, and I think on the roadmap is for Foundry as well, if I understand correctly. But kind of the visualization and like the interoperability of them, what they're talking to, and then permissions too. So, and then it comes down to what types of security and policy management do you have at the same time. So almost like conditional access for agents, if you will.
Nice.
So yeah, definitely going in the right direction there. So hopefully everything will kind of, my understanding is it's in preview. So I'm sure, as features are added, right, we'll see even better components added to it. But just overall AI security, right? There's a lot of features on the Microsoft side. So, we could look at specifically with Microsoft Purview, you have what's called data security posture management for AI. At Ignite, they did announce there's kind of a version 2 of it, because there's always been data security posture management and data security posture management for AI in the portal, right? Which one do you go to? It's logical. They combined them. So it's kind of what I've seen called as data security posture management version 2, if you will, or V2. And in the portal, what you'll start to see is like a classic for the old one, kind of side by side, so you can see what the difference is. But big thing is just combining those into more intuitive single space. And then just enhancements around what was called like data assessments. So one of the key pieces that we were talking about is finding, from a Copilot readiness standpoint, is finding overexposed sensitive data. And then the data assessments can help with that, and they can even now remediate that as part of the newer features. So then there's overall just Purview reporting as well that's been enhanced in there. So it's kind of your control plane, if you will, kind of like Agent 365 for what's going on around data and AI in the environment. So, and there's a lot of other features, as you start to think about, are you only allowing certain AI apps, right? Is a common question. Do you have a policy that you're trying to force the actual controls on? So like Defender for Cloud Apps and Defender for Endpoint could work together, where you could block Anthropic if you wanted to, right? As an example, if you're only adopting Copilot.
Mike would be so sad if we did that.
Or vice versa, right? Whatever the case may be.
Don't do it.
So one is just having visibility into what's being used on the endpoints with like Defender for Cloud Apps and that cloud app telemetry, and then you can choose what to do after that, right? Policy wise, including endpoint DLP as well. So if you want to, block sensitive data from going to the app, still allow the apps, but block sensitive data, right? From that perspective, then you have that ability. So that's kind of the main conversation really having, is like, how is does all this stuff come together to help you, still allow adoption, but still have security and data governance around it. So
nice. And so I know, not to shift too hard on topics, but I know one of the things that you have brought up, as well as some of the changes in licensing, and part of that is, Security Copilot, and there's a few other things that have been announced as those or as additions into some existing license packs. So what do you want to say about that, Chris?
Yeah, a big one top of mind is Security Copilot being included with M365 E5. So you could always get Security Copilot, but it's based on security compute units or SCUs, right? So it's the back end billing based on consumption of AI horsepower, if you will, on the back end in Azure. What they've done is there's essentially included SCUs per month now. So this is rolling into tenants kind of as we speak. I think there's kind of like a 30-day reminder that will pop up. Or you could even talk with your Microsoft reps. I think I've seen in a few cases to maybe expedite it. But slowly rolling in after that Ignite announcement. And you essentially get it's 400 SCUs per 1,000 licensed users, up to 10,000 SCUs max per month. So it resets every month, and it will at least allow you to understand what that baseline is of maybe usage within your environment, right? So everything about Security Copilot's about increasing operational effectiveness, right? How do I summarize an incident for maybe a CISO, if you will? How do I dig in across different areas just with natural language, essentially like Copilot? So tons of capability there, but it was hard to figure out how much it costs and tell clients that. So this will help us baseline it. It will help proof of concepts baseline it now that it's included. So that's one of the huge announcements there. And then second one is Intune Suite. So Intune Suite was always a separate license upgrade from even regular Intune that you have in E3 or E5. So with M365 E5 licensing starting in July, you'll get the full Intune Suite. So all the features that were in Intune Suite. So that's things like remote help, advanced analytics. Was it
Cloud PKI, I believe.
Yeah, Cloud PKI. Sorry, firmware updates over the air, and then enterprise privilege management as well. So what's also interesting is E3, M365 E3 customers get a subset of those as well. So that's super surprising, right? Great move. But there's a lot of good security governance controls within Intune Suite, right? That now you can look at and bring into your strategy. So
yeah, definitely. And if memory serves, also going back to Security Copilot in E5. So if you have fewer than 1,000 users, they essentially give you fewer SCUs, right? You don't have to have 1,000 users to be eligible.
Oh yeah.
Is that the case?
Prorated in some way.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Yep. For our smaller viewers that maybe don't have 1,000 users, you can still take advantage of some of that. So it's certainly something to keep in mind. I mean, that was great. There's a lot of security stuff and there's more to come. And, security is one of those areas that I think, like AI, changes day by day. So I'm sure there's going to be more and more discussions to be had. But, Sat, I see you've been kind of quiet there, and I want to give you some time to talk through some of the digital workplace stuff, because I know that's near and dear to your heart. And there's been some really cool stuff there, too, that you kind of alluded to before. So what do you got for us?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I'm going to try to say the least amount of AI and agents. See how that works.
Where's the fun of that?
Yeah, but before I go back, talk about like the new stuff, I want to add one more thing to the 26 strategy discussion item, and that's a user adoption and training. So for companies who are not putting this as a mandatory line item in their budget, it should. Right? Because there is so much momentum. There is so many new things, AI, productivity, digital workplace, to some degree for end user, it might come across as a very overwhelming thing, right? So to channel this properly, because the tools are only good if users know how to use it, right? So user adoption needs to be lockstep with everything from day one strategy up to the rollout, right? So with that being said, from the Ignite perspective, from digital workplace, there has been a lot of changes and enhancements to the intelligence aspect of productivity. As we all know, Microsoft Teams is becoming more of a power hub when it comes to collaboration, right? It started with Teams channel, chat. Now we have enterprise telephony into it, so more and more organizations are collapsing their enterprise business voice solution and making it part of Teams, which is already adapted and it's already doing so much things for them. And with that, now we have the intelligent recap, the summarization of meetings. Likewise, we can also do recap of a phone call for enterprise business voice. And one of the value that I think it brings is a lot of the times, whether you are doing a transfers internally of calls, or if you're a receptionist or executive assistant, stuff like that, when you are transferring that call, now with the addition of intelligent recap, it can actually summarize what the nature of the call is to the next recipient. So you're no longer just doing a blind transfer or putting callers on hold and then go talk to somebody else and then do a transfer. So now it's like more streamlining, right? And I think this is going to be the common trend that we see with the adoption and rollout of Copilot and all its productivity features. Is it is going to result into time saving, right? So when we have this intelligent recap or remote attendees part of it, no longer they have to go find and fish for information maybe they didn't hear on the meeting. And like just slowly, meeting by meeting, if you factor in 5 meetings times the number of meetings we all attend in our daily basis, I mean, that's going to result into like multiple hundreds of hours, right, over the course of the year. So that's been a big improvement in terms of adding the voice feature and then the meeting intelligence. Couple of new things that came out from a meeting room perspective. Is there are 2 big flavors if people don't know what the meeting rooms, right? There's Android-based meeting room systems and there is a Windows-based meeting room systems. Android has been kind of little ahead in terms of some features, but the Windows one is catching up now. So the new feature that's coming out is now we can do some of these PTZ cameras. Those are like pan, tilt, zoom. It basically does like active speaker tracking, things like that. Those PTZ controls are coming native to the Windows-based room systems. What that means is a streamlined meeting rooms. No longer you have to have different remotes or different control panel to kind of like change the configuration of those cameras. So that's huge. The other thing that's also Microsoft is doing is adding Miracast support, and this is a wireless content sharing feature. Eliminating some third party, right? So most times we go and see there's like IP address, you go to URL, put a code in, share your screen. A lot of those things are coming native. So Miracast is going to be part of it. Microsoft Teams casting is already part of it. And the last thing I wanted to also mention on the room side is Microsoft is extended the support of Android version 13 and 12. Until 2028 and 2030, respectively.
Wow.
So that's a big thing for a lot of clients because it directly affects their hardware refresh lifecycle, right? So Android 13 is, 12, 13 is kind of coming near the life cycle, but Microsoft has extended from the MTR perspective, so they can have a little more return on their investment, give them more window to plan the upgrade. One last thing I'm going to add. 26, I think, is going to be a big focus on Microsoft Places, because as workforces are coming back into the office, the effective utilization of office space is going to become critical, right? So Microsoft Places is it's been, I think it was released last year or a year before, but it's like very early stage, right? And what it is essentially a floor plan of your work environment. People can create their work plan. So now you can kind of see who is in the office, who is remote. You can accept meeting in person or remotely. There is Place Finder. You can go find resources. There's like 3 different tiers of it. And one of the big thing it does is resource reservation, desk booking, and auto release. So if somebody books a meeting room, it's a no-show, it can use the sensors on the meeting room equipment that nobody actually entered the room and auto release the room, right? And make it available for ad hoc usage and things like that. So the resource planning is going to become like really critical. And then of course we add a Copilot layer on top of it, and it just takes it to a whole different level. Now you can like I can put the 4 of us on a meeting invite, and it can just look at your work plan and tell me like, hey, maybe you should schedule an in-person meeting because 3 out of 4 people are set to be in office according to their work plan. And by the way, this is the closest room for most people book meeting. So on one click of button, it can do all that for me, which is huge.
I thought Sat said he was going to talk about AI. Anyways.
Yeah,
I kept it at the end just a little bit.
Yeah, I did hear you say Copilot, so yeah, I think you
Shoot.
hit your quota for AI content for what it's worth. No, I mean all great things, and especially in 26, as we were talking about before, as we get into more hybrid work and people and RTO, being able to work intelligently is going to be really important. I think the biggest thing we need to make sure we can do is if somebody doesn't come to the meeting in person, that there's some sort of shaming mechanism. Send an all company email that says that somebody didn't show up for their meeting. So if we could put a feature request in with Microsoft, I think that would be great.
Perfect.
So we've got about 10 minutes left for this here today. So what I'd like to do is ask all of you, one individual question, just to kind of get your thoughts and kind of wrap up on some of the things we've talked about today. And then I do want to get your closing thoughts on topics and 2026 predictions. So, I think from my perspective, where I want to start here is with you, Chris. I think a lot of enterprises are already paying for Microsoft capabilities. What do you think that they can do to be more strategic about leveraging their existing Microsoft licensing?
Yeah, I mean, that's a common thing we see is, let's say you purchase D5 all up, and there's a lot of rationale around potentially other third-party tooling you might be using as well, where there's some overlap, right? So work with a lot of clients on a daily basis to kind of go through that type of exercise to do kind of like an overall health check, right? Understand what you have currently configured in the E5 stack as an example, what you might not be utilizing already. Maybe there's overlap with other, let's say in the security space, security tooling from third parties. See if there's, potential migration paths for those, right? Or takeout paths, and, related to how the contracts are and when they expire. So kind of going through that whole rationale. But it's also, the value, right? Like what are you trying to do? Are you trying to approach zero trust? How does that map back to what capabilities you already own in that licensing? So definitely use case based, but there's kind of straight potentially complete migrations from existing tooling as well. So
nice. I mean, so and speaking of value, obviously there's value in everything. Hopefully there's value in everything we're talking about today. But one of those other areas is definitely in data estate. So, Sean, from your perspective, what are your thoughts on adopting Fabric without a data and AI strategy, and how that affects complexity and kind of reduces value?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You need to have that underlying conversation with clients. And, even if I get into a conversation where they're interested in a very specific set of use cases for Fabric, I got this weekly business report that I need to put out there, reporting on sales or whatever. Like, I always ask those questions about AI. Where are you thinking going beyond this? Because it doesn't really do any good to set up your Fabric environment if you don't keep in mind of those foundational elements that are going to underpin all of that Copilot, AI, and agent work that's going to inevitably come down the road.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. And I think the other piece of that you touched on is Copilot, and Mike, I'm going to ask you. So we have a lot of customers that really they have board mandates. They've got, executives are pushing down, we need Copilot. Let's buy as many licenses as we can and just push them out. But, I think what we're seeing and what I'd like to see from you is, where do you really see the ROI? Where do you really see the value in Copilot? Because I don't think it's from licensing more people.
No, it's establishing the use cases and how you're going to use it. It's moving very fast, right? Like I like to say, AI has like a 3-month cycle and then a 6-month super cycle where it's almost not the same product anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is across the board, we see that. So it's moving fast. And I think because of that, people are just instantly saying, you know what, let's just license everybody and that's going to fix everything. Well, there's a lot of elements to that. One, training, right? Again, if I hand someone an automobile and we've established that, automobiles are going to make our shipping faster, all that stuff, but no one's ever seen one. They don't know how to load it. They don't know how to drive it. It's not it's worthless, right? And the same things with AI. I know it's easy. I think it's easy, but everybody has to have that aha moment, right, with it, to where they're like, oh, I totally get it now, and now I'm using it more efficiently. So finding those use cases is the biggest ROI we have, and finding many of them of how they do their day to day. And again, we've found that with lots of customers, and that's kind of our approach to it, right? Is that just don't blast it out like this. Like, let's start finding our ROI right through this. Let's find our use cases and start, instead of hitting it with, a hammer, right? Let's just kind of methodically go through the thread of that, and this one, and you're just going to see, the ROI go through the roof if you approach it that way.
And I couldn't agree more. And being more strategic and having a use case and pushing out that way, whether it's per department, I think makes a lot of sense. And so speaking of strategy, so Sat, last one for you. I think as we've seen from a data perspective and a collaborations perspective, we're seeing a major increase in adoption in SharePoint, Teams, Power Platform, et cetera. What's your take on companies that aren't quite there yet? Whether they're just seeing them as productivity tools, or not really seeing them as true collaboration tools. Like, what are your thoughts on what you're seeing in that area?
Yeah, I think the
Talk about AI.
Yes, they need to catch up with AI, and that brings
There
all
we
the
go.
productivity with it.
All right, you can go back on mute. That's fine.
Yeah. No, I mean, joking aside, I think the big thing is productivity, right? I think people are not realizing the gains that organizations can take benefit of once they put this tooling in the right place and educate the users to use it properly. That's the whole theme, right? The whole frontier firm strategy is, it's agent-led and human supervised. I think something to that nature, right? So to me, it's more intelligent workforce, tool consolidation, reducing redundant tooling, doing the same thing, and that has a direct impact on your operational expenses, right? So while you save money, you are able to increase productivity, users are happy, and then obviously you get more done, and it's almost a very polished communication, right? Everybody understands properly, it's got good recap, it's got more conversational insight into it. And then, one other thing I'm going to say for 26 is when it comes to intelligent workplace, Microsoft Places is going to be a big thing. The conference room technology is going to be a big thing. No longer you can do like a traditional rectangle conference room as the mindset when you were designing these rooms. We have to factor in the hybrid workforce, and that comes with modern managed services around it, which is automation, right? Self-healing type capabilities, occupancy tracking, utilization, and all these things have power utilization. All these things have direct impact on how your business function and your spending.
Yep. So, and I agree. And I think all that, it makes organizations more efficient, right? In terms of how they collaborate, how they effectively utilize technology and effectively utilize their licensing. So we are just about done. So what I'm going to do is for everybody here, I'm going to let you ad lib a little bit and kind of go through in about 60 seconds a piece, because we are running low on time. One key insight from what you're seeing or what has been announced for 2026, and then give me one prediction or give me one recommendation about what you think 2026 is going to bring. And once again, we'll try to keep it short here and wrap up. So Mike, I will start with you just by random chance.
Sure. Yeah. Again, I think agents are going to be it, right? I think Microsoft really pushed it in 2025, but the lack of controls that were there, so a lot of organizations just didn't want to do it. Also, again, I think single model kind of held it back. I think with the multi-model, more controls in place around it and governance, I think this is going to be where it's at. I think the true citizen developer, if you will, like we've talked about with Power Platform, is going to be really there, because again, the gains that someone in, say, finance or HR will get from creating their own agent that does something they do every day is worth its weight in gold.
There you go. John, what do you got? You're on mute, by the way.
Sorry. Since I support our Microsoft 365 stack too, the collaboration stack, I'm going to say Loop. I'm all in on Loop. It is a really cool collaboration tool. It's fun to use, and the idea of having like multiplayer live collaboration that you can do inside of a Teams chat, inside of an email, inside of and just in the Loop experience in general, and have that all updated live as other people are doing it. I think it's a very cool collaboration tool. I think it's going to make people more productive in 2026. So check it out.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a really good commercial for Loop. I like it. Chris? What do you got, Chris?
So I was going to say agents and AI, but now let's flip the script a little. So phishing resistant MFA, right? Probably the number one attack vector is man-in-the-middle attacks, stealing tokens, tricking the user into signing in, even though they have MFA. You can still steal that active token and essentially become that user. So phishing resistant MFA methods are probably, in my mind, required at this point. I mean, there's kind of no way around it. There are other tools, but it's going to be one of your top identity control plane areas you want to focus on.
Perfect. Sat, you're also on mute.
I'm gonna say Microsoft Places is gonna be a big thing, I think, for 26, because people just don't realize the capability it brings. Once they get a taste of it, it's gonna be a game changer on how the workplace intelligence, in addition to the Microsoft Phone, Teams Phone Mobile, Teams Premium, all the meeting room capabilities and the conference room technology that we talked about. I think the entire productivity stack is going to be a big focus in 26. But I think Microsoft Places is going to just take it to the next level. It is super cool. So check it out.
There you go. And then from my perspective, I think the biggest thing, that I'm seeing on the cloud side, at least, is a major push toward app modernization. Is a lot of our customers that are wanting to leverage more platform services and really get out of the game of, managing virtual machines, patching security agents and things like that, and kind of shifting more toward PaaS. So I'm certainly seeing a major shift, and obviously things like Power Platform and some of the other SaaS offerings that Microsoft is putting into M365 have really helped there. So with that being said, we are out of time for this meeting. If anything that we've talked about, whether it was AI or Teams or security or cost optimization or Microsoft Azure, any of those things, if any of those are of interest or anything we've talked about, please reach out to us. As mentioned earlier, the 5 of us, as well as a few other people, sit in our office of the CTO. Our entire role is to help our clients strategize on how to adopt these technologies and how to span multiple different areas that cover everything we've talked about, and even some of the things we haven't talked about today. So if you need any assistance or you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us, reach out to your account executive, and we'd be happy to jump on a call and talk with you. But otherwise, Sat, Chris, Sean, Mike, thank you guys for joining on this webinar today, and thank everybody for tuning in. And with that, have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, Tom.
Have a good one.
Everyone.